Appreciate that.
So also I had one more question. So
Yes.
the first thing I did was I built 4 or 5 steps and then started adding text to previous steps, like step 1. And whenever I add a text object, like you're showing here, they are highlighted in the first 3 steps. How
Yes.
do I switch them off for some specific steps and then re-highlight them? Is there an option or I have to always manually add? As in, let's say there is a title text, but I only want them to be highlighted in step 1, step 4, and step 6.
Yep. Yes. So the way to do that is to essentially when you double click on a step, that's going to activate its visibility on that step. And so doing that again, so double clicking again will then turn it off. Alternatively, on where you have a text object or any object that you want to apply to multiple steps, you can click and drag from the step that's visible, and that will then apply visibility to multiple steps. So this is how you can sort of very easily turn things on and off and play around that way. So that's going to be the main interaction there. So great question in terms of how to use this timeline. I don't think we really got into sort of that nuance of how do you turn things on, turn things off, apply visibility across different steps. And the one thing to also note there is that we have this animate between steps checked off by default. And what that means is that if I update the position of this object, it's actually going to update its position across all steps. Now, if I have that checked, then when I update the position of the object, it's just going to apply to that step. So that's going to be one of the key buttons that you interact with as you start to set up the scenes. I don't know if you guys ran into that in sort of some of the experimentation.
So is there a option to turn on or off the visibility in the settings rather than from the UI?
There is not, no.
We did go back and forth on that very question, though.
We did. Yeah. So cool. Those are great questions to start. We're going to get more in depth here with pretty much everybody here. So let's just sort of set the high level agenda here. So what we're going to go through today, one, just provide you guys some quick updates, talk about sort of some organizational things related to Slack and providing feedback and sort of things you guys experience. And then we're going to go into sort of our more in-depth lesson, and then we'll break out into our separate groups for experienced and new users and start to dive in deeper where we'll help you guys actually start to build these. So with that said, let's just provide a general update, which is to say we've been pretty frantically, fixing bugs, finding issues, and trying to resolve things quickly. And we're trying to keep track of that in our Slack group. So we created a channel called Bugs. So I don't know if you guys have seen, or not everyone has joined the Slack group, but we'll put a link here in the chat window for us here. You can paste that into the chat window. But essentially, we're using Slack as sort of our main repository for getting your all's feedback, as well as to share tips, information. So hopefully this is a good channel. If you don't want to use this, you just want to email us, that's totally fine too. But having it sort of all in one spot, I think is helpful for people. And typically, a lot of people are using Slack. So if you haven't signed up yet, please do that. We have some links here for our quick guide, as well as the how-to section of our website, some older training videos that might still have reference, and then our email address for general input and feedback. So please do use this and feel free to add on, et cetera, and we'll continue to monitor that. And so if you haven't signed up for that already, please do so. The other thing that we found to be very valuable is the software called Loom.com. And the reason this is helpful is that, it's one thing to write a long description of what issue you encountered. It's a very easy thing to do where you can just record your screen and basically have this playback with your face in it and be able to send this out. And so it's free for up to 5 minutes for each of the video links. And we found that to be very helpful. And so we'll highly recommend anyone use that for providing feedback or encountering issues, I think that's going to bode well for people. So I'll pause there, at least from our team. Is there anything else to add on there organizationally before we start to dive in? And maybe Jason, do you want to provide more of an update on the tech side of things and anything there?
Yeah, just in regards to Loom, do narrate. Just give us your voiceover of what you're seeing and tell us about that. Don't just do a screen record. It'd be a lot more helpful to say, oh, I just clicked on here and it didn't do what I expected it to do. So give us as much as you'd like to do, as much information as you would like. Yeah, so we had one glitch for about an hour yesterday afternoon, and I put that message into the Slack window. I can see how many people are actually in the editor at any point in time with our analytics. So I know it impacted just a couple of people, or it may have impacted a couple of people, but I know there's a couple working on it at that time. We're really, if any of you are struggling a little bit, I kind of started to have this conversation at the start of this call. If you're struggling a little bit, get in touch. If you're willing to spend half an hour with us, we would like to use you as a tester, as a user tester. Just say, essentially what we try to do is not tell you how to solve your problem right away. Instead, we want to hear your train of thought that you're thinking about. Why can't I do the thing I want to do? It's a classic user testing thing. We will then, of course, teach you exactly how to solve those. But if we can watch you work for a few minutes, that could be really helpful, because if you're having problems, chances are other people will have problems in the future too. So please volunteer, get in touch with me or Michael to say, hey, I want some extra help. I'm a little stuck, and I volunteer to give you 15 minutes of my time to have us learn from you and learn why you might be stuck. That's it for me.
Perfect. Yeah, and this crew sort of self-identified as the early testers, right? And so yeah, hopefully the bugs you're encountering are to be expected, and that's part of why we're doing this beta release, is to get your all's feedback, to try to iron these things out, because we can't encounter everything. So one thing that I've just recently posted, and I'll be sure to share this with the group here, and I'm just gonna share my screen this way. I just posted this, so this is sort of a very meta actually lesson where I go through how to build a flow using Flow in VR in this case. So I'm actually putting on a headset and going to walk you through. So go through all the settings of how you actually click on things and how that then translates into the flow you see. So, using Flow to describe Flow, I think is quite nice and quite meta. So I'll share this link. There's obviously some things that we're still some buggy things here and there, but for the most part, this is pretty solid in terms of explaining how to go through. So I'll be sure to share that. Apologies we didn't get the video out sooner from the first session. Just had a little bit of issues with some of the video captures we got, but we'll be getting that out pretty soon here. So without anything else, one question was security.
Yes, so Veda, hi. So we have done security audits with, or at least one security audit with a large consulting firm. We are enterprise software folks at our core, and have financial services customers who very, very much care about security. So the base product, no, it is not downloadable. This is a web cloud app. The data is secured in fully encrypted databases, and but it is all run actually off of AWS web servers. And for larger enterprise customers, we have a variety of ways of making sure that the data stays within their intranet, and even could do a full implementation on their own set of servers if they would like. But no, this is web software, and to try to be able to manage all the databases, the multi-user interactions, all of those things online, it would be too hard to do downloadable. So it's only online at this point. Happy to take more detailed question, Veda. We can address that in a more detailed way over email or a separate conversation. Does that help give you a general sense of it?
Oh, yes. Yes. I just wanted to make sure. Some of the times I was thinking of one of the applications where I can use Flow, and in my lab we have sensitive subject data where only IRB approved people can have access to it. So I was wondering if I want to use that data, would it be okay to upload it? And then if need be, I need to show my IRB committee that it's fine. There are security measures in place so that data is not accessible to other people. But from your description, it feels like I can use it for most of it. But for really sensitive data, I think then if my group wants to use Flow for any of this, then I will definitely approach you, for more details and see what other ways we might be able to do it.
That's exactly right. Even with these large enterprise customers, very often what we try to do is have a quick win with a proof of concept, and then with less sensitive data, and then we can go ahead and dig deeper. So into a full, more highly secure solution unique to that organization. So look forward to talking to you when we get to that stage.
All right. So this is JG, and I'm sorry I'm on the road, so if you have some background noise, but you mentioned that you have like a security audit was done. Are those available, the results available to share? So can you share those? Because I'm dealing with a bunch of sensitive data as well, and I'm sure I'm going to get questions around the security of the solution.
Yeah, once we for a deeper enterprise engagement, then we can sign NDAs and we can share the results of our penetration tests and some of those detailed documents. And so for our, hey, you guys are self-selected from a wonderful group of folks that are on the internet. It's a little different set of requirements than full enterprise engagements. And actually our history is very much on the full enterprise engagement side. In fact, this new tool, this self-serve tool, is to broaden that use case a lot broader, but we understand enterprise extremely well. Bill is been in the enterprise industry for a long time as a customer service person, and my whole career has been in enterprise software and security, including financial services. So yeah, let's talk more details.
Okay. Cool. So that's great. So one other thing is we'll also be sending more details on how to do Flow TriCasting, how to do the AR screen recording. Some questions about how to do that screen recording. We're putting together some documentation. Also put just a link in the chat window for anyone that has an iPhone. That's actually how you do screen recording on iOS directly. But let's actually let's kick things off here, and let's actually dive into a lesson, and then we'll go into our respective breakout rooms and go from there. So what I'm going to show you is sort of the end result of what we're going to create today. And the reason we're going to do this is for a few reasons. One is to introduce geospatial data. Two, it's to introduce different tool tips where you can click on a dot and pull up some additional details of information, how to adjust colors and add color scales, and how to represent data using a map. And so, using maps. So some new concepts here, but pretty straightforward in terms of understanding. And if we can also start to dive into other avenues that are applicable more for you guys in our separate groups. So let me go ahead and just walk through this real quick in terms of what the end result is. And then we'll all go through a quick lesson of how to actually build this. So what we're looking at is Donald Trump back in 2016 would look at a map like this and say, the whole country voted red. But that the counter argument to that is that land doesn't vote, people vote. And that if we look at the magnitudes of these dots coming off the map based on the number of votes that were cast, a very different story emerges. One in which the population centers of the US are vote heavily Democrat. And we can take this one step further, which is to look not just at the blue versus red binary output, but instead look at the ratio of Democrats and Republicans. And we see that the country is a little more purple than it is necessarily so blue versus red. And so the whole point of this is, just to show how seeing data through different lenses helps you understand that in a different light. And then we can start to actually pull up additional details here as we go through the data. So I'll stop there. That's a very quick demo of like what we're going to go through and build together. And we can keep adding more and more onto that. But before I do, any questions about what I just showed, or yeah, any thoughts before we dig in?
Actually, I played around with one of the 3000 cities data set. And the map is a wonderful idea. And I was wondering, how do you create a custom map? Like if I want to focus on only just, let's say, one place, not have the entire map, but still have that kind of representation. Is there a way to make that?
Building a custom map will be added into our functionality in the coming weeks.
Nice.
It's basically on the underbelly of this, it's GeoJSON maps, and we just haven't put it together in a way that there's a user interface to upload your own maps and build it out, but we will soon.
Oh, that sounds exciting. Thank you.
Michael, you're muted.
Thank you. So let's actually go through here and we'll build this live together. So let me make this full screen. And all right. So when you first start the flow, as you guys have seen, there's a swarm that's created for you in this timeline. And so by selecting it, we can actually pull that data in from a library. I'm going to put a link in the chat window here right after this. But what we're basically going to be loading is a CSV file of 2020 presidential results. And so just to take a quick look of what that data looks like by clicking this upload view button, we can see its states, county, the candidates, the different parties, the number of votes that were cast in that county, some other fields that were used for figuring out the colors, latitude, longitudes, as well as who won, basically. So with that, let's start to actually order this. And so I'm going to create a new step here. And on this step, let's actually add a map. So by clicking the plus button here, we'll add this globe. It by default comes in at 0.25 radius, which is 0.25 meters. So it's 0.5 meters total in diameter. Now that's relevant if you are presenting in AR where you want to figure out how big of an object you want in your area. So these are in meters, and that is something to keep in mind. I'm going to make it I'm actually going to make it somewhat large here. And the reason why is that I personally like using the globe and then actually pushing it down and rotating it so that whatever I want to be shown is sort of right in the center. And I find that the ability to basically see somewhat of the roundness of the Earth actually helps the points dissipate from each other in a nice way, and it makes it a little easier to move around. So not required, obviously, you can not do sphere, you can do just regular equirectangular or Mercator maps, things like that, but for now I'm just going to keep it like this. So now the map's in place, and what we'll do is on the swarm itself start to actually place these dots onto the map. So to do that, we're going to put these based on coordinates. So map from coordinates using map 1, selecting the latitude, selecting the longitude that was in the data set, and we'll see all of these dots line up onto the map. Now you'll notice that they're stacked as well as they have a certain distance from the map. Now, since we're going to do something a little different, or not different, but what we're going to do is look at the offset of these. Let's go ahead and set this to 0 and also not stack the dots. And then we're going to start to apply a color scheme.
Michael?
Yes.
Your beautiful face is in the way of part of the interface.
Sure. Oops.
Use TriCast to get you out of the way. Okay.
Sorry about that. So underneath colors, you'll see that it's just a fixed color here. And so what we can do is, and I'll pin myself here. Oops, sorry. Okay, so within these color schemes, we can apply a gradient, which is we'll get to, but for now, let's actually do a color scheme. where, and actually not a color scheme. Let's do, this is actually because we have the data defined in, or the color defined in the data itself. So this is something you can do where you can add the hex value of whatever color you'd like into the data file itself. And so that every dot, whatever it is associated with that. In this case, it makes a lot more sense because Republican and Democrats have very strong color associations. And so this is sort of that first view that we saw. Now, the next step will be to be adding in that interactivity. And so within this, let's go ahead and click on interactions. And when we click on interactions, let's go ahead and add some 3D text elements where we can pull up information. And so we'll pull in the county, who the candidate was, the number of votes that were cast, and we can actually round these maybe to the thousands. So we can just see how many votes were cast. And then lastly, we'll put the, actually, I think that's about, or the percentage of the vote. So we'll put the percentage of the vote and add a percentage sign so we can see what they won by. So in doing that, when I now click on a dot, you'll see that information pop up. So it's basically as simple as that in terms of defining basically these tooltips of what we'd like to pop up additionally. Now, after this, let's create another step. And on this step, what we're going to do is have the bars go off of the map. And so we're going to do that with this offset column, where we're going to offset by the number of votes that were cast, and we're going to allow it to go off the map a distance of 0.5 meters. Actually, that might be a little too big. Let's do 0.25 meters off the radius of the map, or off the edge of the map. Now, you can see the dots in space, but they're not connected to the map. So in order to connect those to the map, we add connections, which is a fancy way to say connecting a dot to another dot or a dot to another object. And so with that, we'll click on axis or map, and this will actually draw the lines between the dots and the map itself. And so we get those magnitude lines. And still the same tooltip where we can select and pull additional information is still there. One little trick here, you'll notice that there's a character return after the county and after the candidate, but not the others. And to do that, or to make those changes, what you need to do is within this preface column, just add an enter or a character return, and that will basically, create a character return after the after whatever attribute. So now you can see 73% on the bottom here. And then we go ahead and add one last step here, which is to look at a different way to do colors. And so if I click back onto the swarm, let's go ahead and actually two things. So one, let's change the size of these dots based on the number of votes that were cast, so we can see sort of not only the magnitude, but the dot size change as well. And then what we'll also do is change the colors. And so instead of it being based on attributes that are in the data file itself, we can add a gradient. And so that gradient, what we're going to look at is basically the percent Democrat. So if it was 100% Democrats that voted in that county, it'd be 100%, or it would be 100. And if it was all Republicans, it'd be 0. And so by doing that, we can essentially set the gradient to blue on one side, and we can be more exact with our colors if we'd like, but for now I'm just going to sort of go a little quicker. And that didn't quite work. Okay, so with that, we can set basically this gradient scale that will then look at the number or the percentage votes and color appropriately. And so that is sort of this final step. And so from there, I'm just going to hit save and actually share this by clicking this enable public link. And now this is live on the web and we can all join this live experience. So that's the quick demo. We're going to go more step by step together in these breakout rooms. But before I do that, any questions or additional thoughts in terms of what else you'd like to see beyond what I just went through right now?
Yeah, Michael, this is Ed. I've got a quick question. If there's this quick answer to this, that's fine. In the last example there, you notice that there's a point there, southern tip of Florida, that's kind of hanging off the graph. Is that, at times when we're building stuff that uses maps, we see these kind of floating points. Is that is that a bad data input? In which case we don't need to focus on it. Is there workarounds when you can't get stuff to line up directly on the map? I know there was that issue sometimes where if you were in, I think it was London or maybe Greenwich, and then you were off the coast of Africa, like just any like quick tricks of the trade to get those things lined up when you're just trying to clean up one point.
Yeah. So I was just looking real quick on this one in particular. This looks accurate.
Sierra's from Florida, and she's enlightened us in the chat.
Oh yeah, it's Key West. I was gonna, yeah. So this one is accurate, although it is missing the, you can't quite see the landmass there. So when it's, so to answer your question more directly, when we're doing map from coordinates, if you're seeing a dot in the incorrect location, it's because the latitude, longitude that you have for that dot is not in the correct position. So you need to update the latitude, longitude. But if you're using map to regions, and you're basically selecting a region, in this case, if I said like states as
the world map doesn't have state delineations.
Oh, that's right. Well, in the case that you're doing that, and then you have dots showing up in a different spots, that would be an issue where the map either needs to be updated or the actual region is not necessarily typed in right on the data, so it's not linking it over. So typos or things like that can cause that.
I'll add one word to that, which is when you're dealing with a global map, there's a lot of different ways to list countries as in their categories. We have an alias system where we try to catch all of the standard ones. Certainly, ISO codes and things like that work, but it is eminently possible that we need to add more aliases, and also that you may have a description of certainly some small island nation that isn't in the same format as we expect. And when that happens, it will show up in null island, which is a data science thing to describe data that shows off up on a little island off the coast of Africa, which is a zero latitude, 0 longitude place on the map. So if you see random data showing up off of Africa, it's probably those countries. And just ping us so we can help you figure out, see if we need an alias, or I guess what we actually do need to do as well is publish a list of acceptable names in our global map at this time. So I'll take an action item to do that.
Thanks, guys.
Right, cool. So we're gonna.
There's a question going on in the chat I'd like to speak to, which is size. How many points can you get into here, and why are there limits, and all of that kind of thing. And so what we do is we limit any one swarm to 60,000 points, and it is possible to get a couple of swarms going simultaneously, of course. Remember, this is a presentation system as opposed to a goal of big data analysis. We think that there's still lots of reasons why R scripts, Tableau, Power BI exists, and we're not competing with them in the pure analysis space. So what we do is we have created a system that anybody can go to on a browser, and including on their phones. Actually, I'm looking at the flow that he just made on my phone. And if you want something that's going to perform live on anybody's device, we really just can't let millions of points get there. We will keep increasing our performance as we have time as well. So at this point, we do limit it to 60,000 dots, and we limit your data upload files to, I think, 5 megabytes, things like that. There's a bunch of data science strategies on how to reduce that data and summarize it in ways that would be, continue to make it ideal. I'll just say one other bit about this, which is, an important thing that we're doing is actually giving people a sense of awe and wonder in the experience of their data. And really, you can start to get that experience with even just a few thousand dots. And certainly 10,000, that experience, we recognize it's part of the cool factor, even though we don't sell on cool. And but you can get that without having millions of dots. And yeah, if I'll stop there. Does that help
Awesome.
answer the question and some of the rationale for it?
Cool. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and go into our breakout room. So Jason will host the experienced room, and then I'll take the new room. So let me go ahead and open those. But before I do that, any other questions for sort of the group while we're all here together? Otherwise, we'll go to our little breakouts.
Michael, when are we going to come back together, and how will we know?
I can bring us back together probably 5 minutes before, 5 or 10 minutes before.
If you'll just put it into either our personal Slack, I'll be able to tell people.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be able to pull people back into the main session.
Great.
Okay, cool. So I just opened up the rooms. If you guys can assign yourself, or if you'd like me to assign you, you can go ahead and join one of those breakout rooms, and we will go from there.
And if you're think you're doing really well, feel free to join us over in the Experienced Advanced.
Oh, nice. All right, so I'm going to jump over to the new group. And let's go from there. And then, Dick, are you going to join the new room or the experienced group? You're on mute.
I was going to join the new room.
New room? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll